a whole additional set of letters to the actual people who occupy the property. So I took it out of my City of Tampa budget in my office, and we sent letters addressed resident. So to the actual physical address. So it wasn't going to an investor, it wasn't going to, you know, maybe an aunt or uncle who owns the property, who were out of state or wherever. It was going to the actual person who lives in that house.
Our letters go to the property owner, to the fee owner, on the public records. The reason it goes to them, if you have a tenant,
oh, I understand.
And I send something to a tenant, that tenant may not understand. They may leave.
I understand the reason. But what I'm saying is that the actual person who lives in that home or in that apartment has no idea. Unless you send letters, duplicate letters, one to the investor or the property owner of record, and one addressed resident, that person who lives in that home or that apartment has no clue.
Unfortunately, it's a double-edged sword for us. When I do that, the first thing that the owner is going to say, hey, you're scaring my tenant away. Why are you sending my tenant a notice saying that they have to move?
They are going to have to move.
Well, no, they only have to move right now under advanced acquisition voluntary. Unless if we have an agreement with them, they don't have to move.
Which is why somebody has to educate the people who actually live there. So they're not scared, so that they understand the timeline, so that they know that eventually, if this project is approved and moves forward, that within a year or two they have to move. They might make decisions. If I have a child who is in, you know, a sophomore in high school, and they're going to be a senior by the time they will have to move, I might choose to move now because I don't want my child uprooted in their senior year. So you need to talk to these people individually, maybe one-on-one, so they understand the impacts to their lives. So they can make educated, informed decisions. And maybe they might want to move now. Maybe they don't want to wait 2 years because it'll affect the education of their child. So when we talk about families and we talk about how those families, Mr. Reddick talked about how those families are affected, we're not talking about real estate. We're talking about lives. We're talking about paths. We're talking about, you know, opportunities. And it's great that some of them move and get better opportunities, but they need to understand that. And I don't think a lot of those people do, because like you said, a lot of them are on the properties are owned by investors and they don't have a clue.
So, Councilwoman, we've sent letters at different points. What we'll do is we'll get the specific detail and provide that to you.
Thank you. And it might behoove you to have individuals who can knock on doors, just like you open the office in Ybor City to have someone right there on the ground as a walk-in center where people can answer questions. It might behoove you to hire maybe some interns in urban studies at USF, just saying, that can go out and can knock on doors and talk to people and advise them of the situation. And then they can make the decision whether to seek further information. Thank you. Anyone else?
Yes.
Yes, Councilman Mansell.
There's a gentleman that's called my office, and he calls crying because he and his wife live across the street from her parents, and they're elderly, and they have to take care of them. And the house that they live in is his wife's childhood home that they've had since maybe 1960, I believe. And because of the TBX project, they would have to be relocated, one of the homes. Therefore, they wouldn't have that closeness to take care of their in-laws. And this man calls me in tears, and it hurts me because I have to, as an elected official, put myself in his shoes and ask myself, what if this were me? And what if these were my parents? And I met this individual on a march with the folks that are against TBX as they walk through these neighborhoods, and they showcase and they show people the properties that are affected. And as they shout, no TBX, or stop TBX, I'm quiet because I'm thinking to myself, everything that I see here will be gone, will be relocated or will be demolished. The interstate coming through Tampa over 50 years ago split neighborhoods in two, Ybor City and West Tampa and Seminole Heights. And these neighborhoods have fought and struggled for decades to rebuild themselves. And now we have come to a point where Ybor City is coming strong, Seminole Heights is coming strong. and Tampa Heights is coming strong. But then we have this TBX proposal that once again cuts into the fabric of all the hard work and the character of this neighborhood and these neighborhoods. And I ask myself, if I'm going to be against TBX, what is my solution? Should I support Go Hillsborough? Is rail what we need? Is it transit? My ideal situation would be, had we had left the streetcar years ago, if we had that streetcar, we would have had mass transit. We had mass transit. But with the 1950s and the onset of automobile ownership and the building of highways and interstates that have cut through our city, we pulled up the streetcar, we relied on buses, or they promoted buses and automobile ownership. But times are changing. My generation doesn't rely so much on automobile ownership. They want bike lanes, they want pedestrian-friendly areas, they want to use mass transit, they want something. I like to use the bus and I like to promote it to show people it's clean, it's good, it works. Doesn't work for everybody. But instead of DOT spending all this money from the state, which is billions of dollars, why not partner with the municipalities or the counties to say, let us help you lay down a rail infrastructure. Let us look towards the future. Let us look at CSX lines to convert them to commuter lines. Look at direct shots from USF to downtown to the airport. The future is in transit. The future of our community success is in transit, mass transit. When we have corporations that look to us to move, they will ask the question, how do we get our people around? And we tell them we will use the bus or use, you have to have a car and whatnot. Interstates are not the answer. TBX is not the answer. But widening our roads and tearing into the community again and opening up these unhealed wounds, because we are now coming back, is not the answer. So I wish that the state would say, let's sit down and talk and say perhaps either delay the project or scrap the project and look at other alternatives. We have a potential ballot initiative that would address transit and road improvements and whatnot. But it all comes down to funding and money and leadership and the voices up in Tallahassee or whomever to say, maybe we're going about this the wrong way. Maybe we were too aggressive in the 1950s and 60s with building the interstate. Maybe we need to look at other options. And that's all I'm asking, but because when I talk to these people, I feel their pain and I sense their frustration, and I represent a lot of them in the district that I represent. And I think that we should delay this. We should sit down and talk more and see how we can better spend this money, because it's a lot of money. Because if we do it right now, it'll save us the hassle in the future. We're delaying progress by building more highways. We've been doing the same thing for 50 plus years. Let's look at alternatives.
Councilman, if I could just address actually two things that he said. One, if you could give me the address. There are many of those cases that we are currently working on that we have been made aware of. It may be one of the ones that we're looking into to see what options we have. So if you give me that information off the record, I will look into it. I would also like the opportunity maybe to come back and address some of the, and I would also encourage that maybe the Hillsborough NPO, and I know Rich Clarendon, I thought I saw him in the room. They made an excellent presentation yesterday at the CAC meeting that I thought may be a good primer and I'm sure it's nothing that you don't already know and you haven't already heard, but it kind of discusses the transition of how we've got to where we are with transit and the studies that have been done. We are also we're partnered with HARP to look at the specific items that the councilman just addressed, which is the CSX lines and what premium transit we can bring to the region. We are actively as an agency encouraging that effort to move forward, because we totally agree. We can't continue the same policies of road construction. We understand that. But there needs to be a commitment on the local level. There needs to be a commitment on the regional level to adopt a transit plan that they're going to move forward with. And we will partner with that plan. The DOT will be, as we've demonstrated and throughout the state, we will be a huge partner. And we will contribute greatly to that effort, because we understand the need is there and it has to be addressed. So give us the opportunity. We'll come back. I'll have Ming Gao make the presentation to show you a little bit of what we're doing, maybe discuss a little bit about the premium transit study that I know the Councilwoman and Councilman Cohen are familiar with. So,
I believe you're already on our calendar for May.
Okay.
The CRA meeting, so we'll make sure to add that presentation
The premiums,
They're already coming to us regarding TBX again in May, so
Okay.
we'll add that.
But we also have, at our city council meeting, we talked about the premium transit study
Okay.
that should be starting, you can tell us.
Around September.
Okay. And we asked for a report on that.
Okay.
May I just one quick follow-up? So, Councilman Maniscalco has some information on people who've called his office. And we know people are watching in TV land because my office just got a phone call from somebody who says that they did not get a letter either. Here's his name and phone number so you can contact him as well. So we'll pass that information on.
Thank you.
And we've been in contact with them.
Thank you, Mr. McKinney. A couple things that you did that were very intelligent. One, you hired someone from West Tampa to represent you, you know, and we all know people that come from West Tampa were very passionate, and we will make sure that we try and get things right. Second thing, I went to Quest 6th grade center. In addition, now it is a concrete slab with stairs going up to it, so it's been taken over, which was, of course, an old cigar factory. Mr. McKinney, let's talk. We talked about all the human elements in terms of what it means when you do these type of projects, large projects that affect people significantly. And I think that we all know the history of the interstate system throughout Tampa and what has happened to our former transit system, which started being dismantled in 1946 and 47. The question I have now is the process, because here's what I want to know. We have an FDOT project plan that's been on the books, or excuse me, not on the books, but in the planning stages for over 20 years, if I'm not mistaken. And in order to do the project, you need the cash, you need to accumulate the cash, you need to get the land, you need to do all these other parts of it in order to get it done. And I know that you're familiar with what the U.S. Secretary of Transportation has said about the impacts that DOT has had throughout the years to especially poor neighborhoods. And I think he had a Washington Post article just recently. But in addition, some of the things that he said about the opportunity and what it means to actually build a transportation system and make neighborhoods grow up as opposed to being affected negatively. In terms of the process, if the Secretary of Transportation, the U.S. Secretary of Transportation, did not want this project to go forward, or had made a comment to you and had let's say something to say, we don't want to support this, is that something that is separate from what you all would do? Would you have to listen to that particular secretary, or is it more control at the state level? I'm just curious about that.
If the Federal Highway Administration did not support the project, obviously that could be a potential deal killer. You know, we are following through the environmental process now.
Sure.
I mean, we are early in the process. There's a lot of things that are happening. I know there's a lot of, because of the potential to advance funding into this project, but we are still in the environmental evaluation process. We are having daily discussions with Federal Highway. Actually, this morning we have got a meeting with Federal Highway. So we're working through the process to address whatever concerns that they have. You know, we are also, and I've invited her here today, we've hired USF to assist us in community outreach efforts to look at.
Okay, I appreciate that. I guess the question is that in terms of the process, because usually it's a mixture of state dollars and federal dollars, correct? What's usually that mixture? What's the percentage? Is it 50-50? Is it 60-40? What is it usually?
In this project, I don't have the exact number, but we receive about 25% of our funds from the federal government. 75% comes from the state trust fund.
And then in terms of you know, direction, though, I mean, you know, if USDOT said, and Federal Highway Administration said, hey, listen, we think this is a bad idea. We don't think this actually does what we want to see in the future for transportation in the Tampa Bay area. Can the governor and the Florida Secretary of Transportation say, well, listen, you know what, we're going to go forward with this, we're going to find our other 25% somewhere else, and we're just going to do whatever we want to do? Can you do that, or is that something?
I don't know if I can answer that question. Okay. That's a pretty heavy question.
I'm sure that in the years you've experienced, have you ever had that happen?
Not during my 25-year career.
Okay.
I have not seen
I didn't think so, and I was just curious because we're approaching a new paradigm when it comes to holistic transportation solutions. We know we're not going to get rid of cars tomorrow, And I think all of us know that. And when we have to travel certain places, we need our vehicle. There's no doubt about it. But we want more choices as consumers of transportation. You see it with Uber and Lyft. You see it with, in terms of some of the things that we're doing at Heart, which is experimenting with first mile, last mile projects. We want to use all that is available to us. And I know we talk about autonomous vehicles, and I think Secretary Steinman is a big fan of autonomous vehicles. But at the same time, we need to see, where are we at in 5 years, 10 years, 25 years, as opposed to doing a project that is, for the most part, kind of, started in the early 90s, and now we're trying to make it happen in 2020, let's say. I'm just using a number here, in a year. In terms of the next part of the process, I know the NEPA process has to go through. That's being done currently. And then, is there any viewpoint of using any of the lane capacity that comes up exclusively for transit? That's one of the issues. I know that we kind of talked about it both from my side of Heart, and Secretary Steinman has mentioned some of this, which is they are looking at using lane capacity for Heart to be used free of charge to those riders, but it hasn't been put in, excuse the pun, concrete about us going forward. Because if this goes through, we need to provide other opportunities and options for people to have mass transit, because if they don't do it, it will, I think, vote it off. We're not done with this process. I know it's going to be, I think, long and drawn out. I think that if you look behind you, a lot of people behind you are not in support of this TBX project. And it's not a finalized product yet. And I think you know it, I think we all know it. So I want to make sure that we, and I told this to the Secretary Simon directly, and I'll say it to you too, which is you need to find ways to mitigate what you're doing, in addition to finding solutions that fit the needs of the neighborhood, and not just the needs of the drivers that are driving on that freeway. Because we cannot continue in this kind of loggerheads without actually coming up with real solutions for the choices that people actually want, and not because we want to build a road. And that's something that we need to really think about before we go forward any longer. So I just wanted to ask you that process, because I know that money is a big part of it. You need to get the funding. You have to have the state legislature continue to look at this. If the state legislature said no and decided not to fund it, or if it was vetoed by the governor, it would hamper your ability to go forward, and might be much more difficult. So, I think that if you look at the people that are concerned about this particular issue, the holistic transportation solutions that we need to look at might include some of this, but it doesn't include all of this, and that's something that you're going to have to think about. Okay. Thank you, Chair. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Gary.
Just one quote, please.
Yes. Councilman Miranda.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I look at it this way, it's not about what's happened in Ybor City, what's happened in West Tampa, what's happened in Seminole Heights, what's happened in Tampa Heights. If we continue with the same mindset, all of us will all be living underneath the pressure. We got to find a different route to get through. And that's my quote. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
I'm checking. Hey, Councilman, go on.
So everyone, I believe, has had a chance to speak, and I wanted to say something to DOT and to the community. This was Lisa's motion to bring this up today. I believe it's coming back to the CRA again in May. And I have felt that this is a very important forum for this discussion to take place, because our role here is to protect the neighborhoods of the city of Tampa. And this is a place where there is a lot of concern that's been expressed about the details of this project. At the MPO, the project is being presented in a little bit of a larger form, because it includes areas of the region, in fact, that really do not directly bear on the city itself. There are pieces of this project that have to do with the airport, that have to do with the integration with the Howard Franklin Bridge, that have to do with building out in the right-of-way between the expressway, between downtown and West Shore, And part of those plans include some provisions for a transit envelope and for perhaps a transit envelope across the Howard Franklin Bridge.